Tell you what, before we go into we can learn a lot from something we just did. Believe it or not, this is more of an exercise what we did, and you didn't know it.
He's training us to be secret assassins.
Nice.
It's not that. But think about it. If you're embarrassed and unwilling to, if you didn't know a song, that's fine. You can struggle through it. I understand that. But when you don't attempt or you minimize yourself amongst other Christians and giving God praise, how do you plan to stand firm to the world for your faith? Think about it. If you can't worship God together because you're too embarrassed by your brothers and sisters in Christ that are right next to you, that worship the same God you do, that believe the same things you do, that are in the same fight you're in, if you can't stand up with them, how are you going to stand up and face the world? I'm asking, tell me.
You can't.
That's like, if I can't make a pass in football practice, if I can't hit that note in band practice, how are you going to hit it at the concert? How are you going to make it at game time? When there's more pressure, when there's actually somebody trying to stop you from doing it. How are you going to be successful in the world standing up for Christ if you can't even worship Christ amongst your own brothers and sisters? I'm asking. This is not rhetorical. Tell me. How are you going to do it, Trey? I'm not getting on to you, but this is an opportunity for us to learn a little bit about ourselves. I've been guilty of the same sort of things. We're ashamed of our faith inside the church. Then how are we ever going to stand firm for it outside?
You can't.
You can't. It's impossible. In practice, I know in batting practice, man, you're willing to swing at balls outside the strike zone because it's batting practice. It's practicing seeing the ball and putting the bat on it. Right? It's about maybe in practice you should be willing to do things you might not necessarily do out in a game or do out in the world. But if you won't even swing at a ball in practice, then you're never going to swing at it during a game. When there are people watching, when it's not your teammates throwing you a ball. When it's, in this case, your enemy, another team throwing you the ball, you're not going to swing. If you're unwilling to do the things that God calls us to do inside His own house, there is no way you can possibly be effective for doing His will outside of this house. Does everybody understand that? Daquan, do you understand that? Explain it back to me. You understand it, right? Then explain it back to us. Because I'm asking you. You don't know. The whole theme of this ministry is supposed to be relentless. To relent less when pressing the gospel forward. It's to actively search out areas in which we don't do well so that we can become better at it, so that we can take the gospel to further reaches. But if we can't do it here, how can we ever do it out there? The high schoolers especially. We're planning a mission trip at the end of the summer. If you can't do it here, how are you ever going to do it outside the walls? But how do we change it?
Don't be ashamed in here.
Not be ashamed. That's a big part of it. Some of it, I think, is a little pride, especially with guys, I think. I'm too proud to sing. I'm good enough not to sing. We have to kind of break those barriers down. You will never hear me say there's anything wrong with having some pride. You should have some pride in the school you go to. You should have some pride in the church you go to. Having a little bit of pride in what you do helps you keep the floors clean, helps you do things right. But being proud, that says I'm too good. These things are below me. I think guys especially fall into that category, especially when we sing in church. I'm too proud to sing to Christ. That's below me. Christ doesn't want to hear my voice, even though he explicitly tells us he does. If we want to learn how to be effective ministrators of the gospel in the world, we've got to learn to be able to do it together in here with each other. The place you should be able to be most effective at sharing your testimony is one person to the next. Because they understand. You're not really trying to convert them. You're just sharing, you're practicing. You can't be ineffective sharing your faith in here and then step out on a stage somewhere. Step out into your schools and then just have effectiveness come all over you. If you're unwilling to do it here, that tells me you're not willing to do it out there. Is that always 100% accurate? No. There'll be days we just don't feel like singing. Sure. Other times maybe there are other things going on in our lives. I'm not talking about every time. But in general, over the course of several weeks or several months, if you're unwilling to do it here, if you're unwilling to prepare yourself for battle here, there's no way you're going to go marching into battle when you leave the doors. What it does is it fools us into keeping our Christianity here. It puts our Christian faith only inside this building. And if your faith is what God calls it to be, this building cannot contain it. This building can't even come close to containing it. It's all man-made. Think about it. How many people do you know that, oh, I'm a Christian? Well, when I go to church, that's my Christian self. When I'm at school, it's my school self. Maybe they play sports or in the band. When I go to competition of any sort, I have my competition self. And they separate their lives out that way. You know any people like that? I do. I met lots of them in college, and they'll tell you just point blank, when I go to church, I am this way. When I go to work, I am this way. And even when I'm with my friends, I'm another way. But God tells us through his Bible that you are to be only one way. You are to live the life Christ lived, no matter where you find yourself at. And if we fail to do that here, we've already failed to do it in the world. That's not what our lesson's about. Something just so simple as just singing out. Now, I know it's a little rough if you don't know the words. I'll tell you what, I forgot even some of the words. And I grew up with that song. It surprised me. I was like, oh, I didn't remember that. Now, it came back to me probably a little bit faster than it did you, but I remember when those songs came out. So, unfair advantage me. No doubt. But we should at least be able to attempt. By the second go-around, you should be able to start putting words out there. It doesn't have to sound good. That's the beauty of it. God doesn't say, hey, you have to sing until you just got an opera voice for me. No way. He just says, sing. Just give me praise. If you sing out and it just sounds like a cat being skinned alive, Christ says it is well received because the worship has been deposited. I've gotten the glory you intended. He knows the vocal cords he gave you. He knows if some of you can sing real good and some of you can't. And that doesn't mean everybody has to get up on stage and have a solo or be in the choir. That's not what it's saying. But as a Christian group, when we come to sing praises to God, you are to participate. I don't know how your PE classes are run, but they should always be where people are encouraged to participate. And if they don't, they fail. Right? I mean, PE is physical education. And if you fail to participate, then you're not getting educated. There's more than head knowledge when it comes to physical education. You have to get out and do things. And we might not think it's that important to be able to roll a ball or to throw a ball overhand. We go, well, I'm not going to do sports. That doesn't affect me. But that's simply not true. There's lots of skills we pick up through PE that we end up using the rest of our lives. How to lift a heavy box. One day, Lord willing, you'll have kids. They're going to want to throw the ball around. Whether they become star athletes or not, when they're little, they're going to want to throw balls around. It's going to make their bodies healthier, more maneuverable. Think about it. When you're active young, it's easier to stay active when you're older. It is. These joints aren't going to hold up forever. I wish they did, but they don't. Everybody knows what a knee replacement is, right?